Wait, what's that? Are these studio lights? Maybe. Maybe they are. Folks, welcome. Welcome to another episode of RTAF Podcast. Thank you for being here. This month's guest, Shane Mauss. Legendary psychedelic comedian. He's on the road right now. You can check that out at Shane Mauss, MAUSS.com. Shane's also a psychedelic advocate. In fact, his whole comedy routine sort of revolves around the psychedelic experience. And he's also a scientific communicator. He has a podcast called Here We Are, which is a great podcast, worth checking out. And it delves into scientific topics. He interviews a lot of tenured professors and scientists working in the field, stuff like that. So if you're into a podcast that could have been called Sciencey AF, you should check that one out too. Anyway, you're going to love this episode. It's just real relaxed, real laid back. Shane was nice enough to come to my place and have a conversation with me for about an hour and 30 minutes. So thanks, Shane, if you're listening to this. And yeah, we get into all sorts of stuff, mostly comedy, psychedelics, and science, since those are his wheelhouses. Plenty more to talk about next time. Have a bunch of notes, questions that I didn't even get to. So definitely look for him to be a repeat guest in the future. Also, I should mention, he didn't have Shane has these new cool products. You can go to mypurplelady.com. What are they? What are they, you ask? They are gummies. Blue Lotus gummies and Amanita muscaria gummies. Very nice. I've tried both. Very mild, very workable in social situations, and yeah, I love what he's doing with that. And I guess without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. Peace. All right, Shane Mauss, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're a comedian. Is that how you would, if we're talking like third dimensional identity stuff?
It's the way most people think of me as a comedian. It's what pays the bills.
Sure.
Yeah, I do a lot of other things.
Right.
And sometimes I'm much more passionate about, say, science communication or something.
Right.
But,
okay.
But comedy's what pays my bills. It's what people know me for. And so, yeah, I'm a comedian.
Nice. And then the other, you mentioned scientific communication. And the other thing I believe I've heard you say is, would you say psychedelic advocate or proselytizer?
Something
Purveyor.
like that. Yeah. I mean, everything changes over time. I think when I first started, I started out as a regular comedian. I was fortunate enough to catch a bunch of breaks early on and
nice.
Get on late night and that sort of thing. So I was like a absurdist kind of short jokes, setup punch kind of person, and found myself, full-time headlining around the country and even internationally. And then when I started doing international shows, they would have festivals where a lot of people have like more themed shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of wanted to travel internationally more and break into those markets.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what themed show would I do? And I happened to always be reading like science books as a hobby. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I'd put together a science themed show. And then once I started down that track, then I started liking the idea of doing themed shows more. Usually they'd have a scientific bent to them. And
so are you reading a lot? Is that
Right now, no, but
Yeah.
generally,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of audiobooks, a lot of audio
Same.
because I drive quite a bit for touring,
I
and so
noticed.
audiobook while driving
I
is
didn't know that you were
fantastic.
doing the van, living out of the van kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I generally stay in Airbnbs, which I should really write them to sponsor me or something because I actually am quite a big fan and I use their business like crazy. But I like staying in people's homes and all these various like weird spaces. Like you saw the one that I
Yeah,
got in
yeah.
Denver for like entertaining and everything. And
It was like a 1950s pop art themed. They had like physical Campbell's soup cans in different colors and like
yeah,
just sort of like halftone comic book style stuff on the wall.
yeah, and like a little putt-putt
Oh
course and
yeah,
like
that's right.
karaoke lounge and all this other weird crap. And so, and then sometimes I'll stay in a place where it's just like the people they went like real far to like let people know about Jesus, like with
They're
their
like, come
Airbnb.
stay and
It's like
get converted.
it's like this is an insane number of crucifixes to have in an Airbnb. That's for
Yeah.
that you're giving some, but I love that. I once stayed in a place. It came up as like one of the top 10 weirdest places on Airbnb, and so I just like sight unseen. I was like, hell yeah. And it was outside of LA. It was a guy who did all of the Marilyn Manson videos. And so his
Oh,
entire house was just made of all these like weird demonic
props.
like props and
Ooh.
stuff like that. It was very, very strange. But then I like a tiny house and
Yeah.
on a ranch, you know. I like someone that feels like you know, that wants to decorate like an entire wall with horseshoes or something. Like I
Yeah.
like that. So like that's the early days of Airbnb. I really got into it, and then like when they started making Airbnbs like professional,
Yeah.
it kind of started sucking.
Yeah, because you're not really getting a true glimpse of like
No, it's
Americana.
just you're just getting cookie cutter
Right.
like Bed Bath and Beyond
Sure.
decorations and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely become a business nowadays. Like,
Yeah, so it's not what it once was, but it's
so
still
you're
pretty.
kind of like an Airbnb like
Yeah,
hipster purist.
so the van, yeah, exactly. So maybe I'm sure there's new sites that are probably better that I just got to take the time to explore. So there's that's so the van, which I just purchased today, actually.
Congratulations.
I've had 3 weeks test driving it and seeing if it got it off a friend, so rented it for a few weeks
Okay,
to
nice.
see if I really wanted to pull the trigger on it. And it's a major upgrade just in terms of space. And there's a bed in there, which is like napping's great, and I'll like camp in it from time to time. But it's also just like it's so nice to be able to like pull off the side of the road and take a nap quick.
Yeah. So you're a
and
nap
drive.
guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Speaking of proselytizing,
Yeah.
a nap guy. Like I'm a huge like psychedelic advocate. Like okay, like I don't know where I always fall on the psychedelic, like what I think about them necessarily, and I go from like being enthusiastic to getting jaded and like
I can
going
relate there.
back and forth and like
Yeah.
wondering, you know, what there's pros and cons to it and everything. But naps, if there was the only solid advice that I'm happy giving people is more naps. And I'm
So
incredible at napping. A lot of people aren't. I'm like
I might
Olympic
be
level.
yeah. I might be the exact opposite of you in terms of you know, constitutionally made up to be able to take naps in the middle of the day.
Oh man.
I am terrible at it. I've even just now learned how to really sleep somewhere between 7 and 8 hours every night.
Yeah.
Or every night, most nights that I can. And so napping has just always been out of the question. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I'm just an incredible sleeper. I could fall asleep right now, and I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm probably putting some people probably falling asleep right now just listening. That's how contagious my napping skills are.
You do have that deep baritone voice that might lull one to sleep.
Yeah, it's a little hypnotic, I'm told.
So I guess let's. I don't want it to be purely biographical or be hacky and just ask you about your childhood. But
yeah, I don't
were you a
mind.
weird kid?
Yeah, I certainly was.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like a bit of a. I felt like an outcast. I felt like I felt extremely alienated. I know that when I heard of the idea of stand-up comedy when I was 10 years old, I knew right then and there that I was going to be a stand-up comedian. I hadn't even seen a stand-up comedian. I just heard what it was.
That you could get up and just talk and make people laugh.
In front of a bunch of people and make people laugh. And because I would have like, I had like really, really bad social anxiety my whole life. And I was a very shy kid, and I didn't fit into like my upbringing, and didn't like, I was raised very religious, and that was very alienating for me. I didn't buy into it in any way.
What
Catholic.
denom? Catholic. Okay.
So that all,
the whole ritual and
they have been messing up children's minds at best for
and other things
for a very long time. They really have it down, and so I absolutely hated it, and made my childhood very awkward and miserable, and I didn't have many friends. The friends that I had thought I was hilarious. I was always like the funniest one in my friend groups or whatever. And those are the very few people that I would like feel comfortable talking to ever at all. And then everyone else is just like, here's this shy, lanky kid that we can call names and pick on and won't say anything back.
Right. Yeah. So I've found this. I try to be like funny in just day to day kind of like interactions. I found that it really relieves my anxiety socially. And I think it puts other people at ease. It's like, oh, he's harmless and like fun, and we can sort of relax. And do you feel that way? Do you think, I don't want to frame it as like an escape from anxiety, but it just sort of, it's like an amelioration or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I do feel like I definitely care less about being funny the older that I get, and that could either be that I'm like more comfortable with myself, and some of my early sensitive humor was like I remember it was like a self-defense from like getting bullied and things like that, but also just like I had no other way to like make friends or impress girls, and than by making people laugh in the back of the classroom and getting into trouble. And so, but it also might be that I'm like satiated. Like when you like write jokes for a living, I mean, that's a very small amount of my time these days because I have so many other things going on. But when you like write and then perform jokes for a living, like I mean, it's like anything. You take your favorite thing in life and turn it into something that you do for a living, and do it all day, every day. And, eventually you go like, some days it's like, I don't give a shit about making anyone laugh today. If I make like one more person laugh, I'm going to puke.
Sorry. I didn't mean to.
So
I can relate. I
mean, I'm sure with like painting and stuff like that, it's you just get like so sick of your shit sometimes, and then you remind yourself how lucky you are to get to have like this awesome, interesting talent, and get to.
I think the way that I try and move through that or around that is just like switching up my style every few years.
Oh, cool.
That's the. It's either it's a chicken or the egg thing. I'm either saying that because I'm I switch my style up every few years and I don't know why,
Yeah.
or I haven't, or it's what I just said, like to keep myself interested, to like
Yeah.
poke around in new areas. And
I feel like I've reinvented myself a number of times in my career. And I started out like I could have just like stayed on the traditional stand-up track, and like I was doing pretty well.
you were. I mean, I think the first time you came into my consciousness was on Theo Vaughn's podcast about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been like 2016 or something.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay. Yeah, you looked a lot different.
Yeah.
You've sort of like,
this was a COVID thing.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
I was deciding because I do like science themed shows too, and then I do regular stand up, and I didn't know what I was going to. I didn't perform for 3 years because of COVID, and then getting into other projects and stuff during it, and losing interest in stand up altogether too.
Yeah.
But when I decided that I was going to do a psychedelic show, because I saw a clear vision to work with like visual artists, which is something that I was always trying to figure out. And then once I figured out how I could do that, I got interested again. And then once I knew I was doing a psychedelic show, I was like, well, I got to keep this hair and beard for being a psychedelic comedian. And also it's like most people haven't seen me in 3 years too.
It's
because
pretty
I
cool
haven't
to
been
like
out there. So like, hey, I look totally different now. And we'll see. I like it. A beard's easy to maintain. The hair is a bit annoying, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely gone through phases where
I had long hair.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of long right now, but I like to shave the sides because it does this like Krusty the Clown thing. If I don't keep the sides shaved, it just looks really, silly.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm a bit of a vain creature, and I'm like, I don't want this
to
hair
some
in my
extent.
face all the time.
Well, like for me, it's like just eating and everything. I'm always I forgot, where's my hairband? If I don't have, I often will have forgotten it in the car or something, and now I like need to pay attention to how I'm eating to like maneuver so that I'm not
eating your own
my hair into things. And I don't know, it's a whole. I'm supposed to brush it in the shower sometimes, and I never remember a brush.
It looks great.
Thanks.
It looks great.
I don't know how ladies do it. Like this is like year 2 or 3 of having long hair, and I just started going out with, needs a bit of a trim right now. My girlfriend currently is my current girlfriend is a former hairdresser. So
she's looking at your split ends, and
I do have some split ends right now. We were just talking about how that's a project for this week. It's going to be a haircut day. So.
Nice.
Did the beard recently. It's just like a lot more decisions to make when you decide to have more hair.
Yeah, true. I've grown the beard out too. And these days I just let it grow out for a few days and then I just shave it up. I've got an electric shaver, so it's just super easy.
Yeah, but I used to have scruff like yours too, and it's like you still gotta like remember to do it and not let it get too long.
It's the neck beard that I could just let, if it would just grow like this, I would be totally fine. But I don't like these scraggly neck hairs. It reminds me of like I don't know, just like Eastern Kentucky for some reason. Like
beards.
Where my family's from. You were talking about eating earlier, and watch me try and smoothly segue this.
I'm already impressed.
Thank you. Should we take an applause break? So I've heard a lot of comedians talk about sort of this idea of like eating shit, meaning like trying new jokes out on stage and them not quite working, and you're getting just this like dead silent crowd, and you're bombing, and like, and I think that's in a lot of ways that sort of like journey in comedy of like having to just be like a opening act for years and just kind of sucking for a while is a lot of the
I mean,
same
even
way
when
as
you're really good, you
Yeah.
can have like jokes that on most nights, even if it's with tried and true material, jokes that on like most nights do really well. Like
yeah.
maybe just something was slightly off with your delivery, or you didn't hit a note, or just like
Yeah.
the venue. You know, a lot of times the venue matters a lot,
Mhm.
or like
What's
yeah.
like do you have like a salient experience, something that you can remember really well
Oh
of
yeah.
eating shit? Like, do you have any good eating shit stories, I guess?
Yeah, it was like this, I think it was like Captain Brian's Off the Hook comedy, and
Is
in
this a venue or a festival or
no, there's a venue.
wow.
It's in, I think, Marco Island, Florida, I believe.
Okay.
Marco Island.
All great things happen in Florida.
Yeah, and it's like where it's where like trust fund preppy douchebags like vacation that
Mhm.
are, and it's like a real like you know, it's real like loafer heavy. I lived in Malibu for a couple years. I'm not
Yeah.
and that's a loafer heavy, but that's a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
These are like exceedingly pretentious, like that think they're better than everyone, but have like no, like that's based on nothing
Right. That their
whatsoever. Like
parents have money.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just some of the yeah, dumbest, shittiest people. And I remember it was like I was kind of reinventing myself and starting to do like more science material and everything,
Yeah.
and I was excited because my act was coming along and I was getting ready to record a hour special.
Nice.
And I was also, you know, experimenting with some new looks and stuff that it wasn't quite working for me
Like new.
either. I think at the time I was like wearing I was trying to like wear a suit on stage and see
Okay.
how that. I've gone through a lot of iterations. I try to never keep the same look for too
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
But wearing a suit on stage is the single least comfortable
Oh, I can only imagine.
caricature
And
of
that's
myself that
something
I've ever done.
that I think most people don't think about when they think about stand-up comedy, or at least I don't. Is like the way that you're presenting yourself visually. It's like I guess that
It
we're
gives off a
visual
different
creatures. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
signal,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if I'm wearing a suit versus whether I'm wearing this versus whether I have like I started my residency. I had a small residency at Area 15 in Vegas, which is where my current show started. It's a show that combines uh, my psychedelic comedy and storytelling and bits of science info and stuff along the way, combines that with visual arts. So I have a live VJ, and there's like, you know, a couple artists that were layering some of their work, and he makes original stuff, and so it's like going along with my set to add that kind of visual component as well, and something that I always wanted to do. And so once I found the right person to partner with, it was really exciting. So, but then I was like, well, this is Vegas, even though it's Area 15. You know, it's Area 15. It's not a casino. It's like a weird,
Yeah, yeah.
immersive psychedelic art hub, I
Right.
guess, and because it's Vegas, and Vegas has like everything's a little tacky in Vegas. Well, I mean, everything is at minimum a little tacky, and then it ranges from a little tacky to obnoxiously tacky.
Yeah.
It's part of the charm if you're in the right mood.
Sure.
That's just like there is not a single thing here that doesn't have like a layer of tackiness over it, and it's just like so over the top tacky.
I went there once. I flew. My parents and I and my brother and his wife. We all flew into Vegas from different spots to go to like the Grand Canyon and the Arches National Park and all that stuff. And so me, my dad, and my brother went out one night, and it was just like I just, I was not in the mood, I guess.
Yeah.
It just kind of like, I think it gave me that disgust kind of like,
Right.
what would you call it? Reaction.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you got to be in the mood for it. And there's been times I've been in Vegas. I'm like, I hate this place so much. But the idea of doing it in a place like Area 15 that was kind of built for as like a hub for to attract people within the psychedelic community, kind of like a permanent Burning Man building of sorts.
Right.
Some of it's a little like Spencer's Gifty, but
Mm-hmm.
and it still doesn't know exactly what it is, but it is a cool, interesting space. And so we built it for that. And then I was like, I can't be in this, like, it's in Vegas, and two, it's this whole like crazy trippy building anyway, so I can't just wear like normal casual clothes like I
Yeah.
normally would. So I started kind of looking around. One company I like a lot, Freeborn Design, was one that I found that was just like, yes, I want to look like a psychedelic Willy Wonka of
Yeah.
sorts. And
Hell
so I
yeah.
have like I have a very trippy suit that's like, it's just, I like finding things that are, I find some of the Burning Man outfits to be too much.
Yeah, sure.
But
Everyone's a captain, or
yeah, and so this is like, I like finding things that are just like right on the edge of obnoxious, but not quite. Like the
nice.
stuff that I wear, I'll go around in public and wear it, and it's like, it doesn't, like, some things are like, whoa, that's a really cool suit. And then when it goes just a little too far, people are like, what is this, Halloween? Like, why
Yeah,
are you dressed
yeah.
like that in public? And so finding things that so that's a new iteration, speaking of
Nice.
wardrobes. But it changes every time you reinvent yourself on stage. You're nervous about, I don't know if it's like when you show a new piece that's in a new style for people, if you're like, how's this gonna go
I'm
over?
very I'm several degrees removed from an immediate visceral reaction from
Hmm.
people, even if it's in a gallery.
Hmm.
It's like you can watch sort of people's reaction, but like I've done like open mics a few times.
Hmm.
It's just totally two different opposite things. Like
Yeah.
if you're saying something and people are like thinking that that's stupid and not funny, you feel it. Even
Oh,
if they are like, haha, and kind of giving you like a
yeah,
pity
yeah,
laugh
yeah,
or something. It's like, um, yeah, so
yeah.
it's very different. But I would say the trade-off is that like sort of the dopamine that I get from making a good piece or selling a piece is like killing,
Yeah, yeah.
but not even. I would say that the rush of like doing well on a stage, even for 5 minutes, which is the only thing I've experienced, is like way up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Adrenaline, dopamine, I'm sure other neurotransmitters that I don't know shit about
Yeah,
are just flooded my brain. I was like, oh my god.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
was kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I was scared when I started. And then along the way, like, you find yourself as a well-established comedian, but slightly reinventing themselves, and you're in Captain Brian's Off the Hook Comedy Club,
Hell
and
yeah.
like there was people just walking out, like, not, I mean, I actually think that, say, a usual room of like maybe 200 people or something like that,
Yeah.
you walk like five people, I think that's kind of like a good sign, if anything, because you
Yeah.
shouldn't, most comedy, it shouldn't be for everybody.
Right.
and
Right.
and um and so, yeah, you're gonna walk a few people. This is like, I walked like half the room. It was
Ooh.
so crazy. And this was like material that I was just, and it was like, it wasn't even that it was like offense, they were offended or something, like they were just like so bored by me
Oh,
too. So it's just absolutely brutal. Cried after that one. I've only cried twice after a
really?
show. One was there, and another one was in a casino in Connecticut. Casino rooms are awful. That was
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that
Was
was
there
like,
smoking inside?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
That's
that's not,
yeah, I know that's not the
not the
worst thing.
bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I can handle some secondhand smoke. It's that the room is like filled with people that lost their children's college fund
Oh, yeah.
playing poker
Yeah.
or blackjack or something, and then the casino like gave them a comp for a comedy show because they
They
lost enough money to the casino that they're like, here's this ticket that's like
here's
a
your consolation
$25
prize.
value or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and then they've been like staring at a slot machine for the last 3 days straight, and they're just like completely brain dead now, and just have been
God.
like, and so, and now they're like withdrawing, and then they're thinking about how they're gonna like win their money back when they go back. It's just the worst audiences ever.
Ew.
That's why I was excited to work with Area 15 in Vegas, and still am. We'll reconnect when I'm done taking the show on the road. But because it's not a casino, and so it was
Right.
like that was the only way I was ever gonna do a residency in Vegas, was
Yeah.
like, cannot be a casino crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. I worked at a racetrack in college
Yeah.
in Kentucky, and it was
Ouch.
very sad. It was like not even just thoroughbred racing where the jockey rides on the back. It was like carriage race. They were like, it was like one horse and a guy in like a two-wheel kind of carriage thing.
Yeah.
It was at the Red Mile. Shout out Red Mile. But I had to walk around with like the betting machine on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And you'd go up to guys who were just, I mean, and it's mostly guys.
Yeah.
For some reason. I don't know why, but it's sad, you know. It's kind of like just, it's really depressing. I had to like quit. And the reason I mentioned the cigarette smoke is I'm trying to sort of like give someone the ambiance of the place who's never been there, you know.
Like tacky, gross, like real degenerate, like pretending to be high class, but yeah, it's
so
you just losing your family's money on chariot racing is
it's wild.
Brutal.
It's so wild. So how long did you have sort of the traditional comedy career before you started having like a sciencey set or like a psychedelic set?
2004 is when I started comedy.
Yeah.
I was within 6 months. I started in Boston. I'm from Wisconsin originally. I moved to Boston. I started comedy there. Within 6 months, I was like, I had quite a bit of buzz within the local Boston scene, and
nice.
Then within like another like year or something like that, I was doing pretty well. Like 2006, I was a finalist in the Boston Comedy Festival.
Oh,
and
nice.
That was a big thing, and then that got me in this HBO Aspen Comedy Festival, and that was like at the time it no longer exists, but it was about the biggest festival a young comic could be in, and then I won an award for best stand-up at that. That was in early 2007, and then I got to like go on and whatever I wanted, and so I did some appearances on Conan and got those Comedy Central spots and things that I'd been dreaming of. And so that was entering year 3, things were already taking off for me, and that's a good like 8-10 years earlier than the most optimistic scenarios usually. And so I was also arrogant enough at the time, because of all of that, to just assume that I could just do whatever, and like also like not do any, like I could not be into like acting or any industry's things and just be a comedy purist and like keep on. And so then I was, by 2009, I recorded a half-hour special, and I was prepping an hour special, And when I was done putting it together, I had like I just wasn't happy with. I was like, so then, and then I'll just like keep making an hour special of like just
Yeah.
random jokes that are like slightly shock value or whatever, but like getting away with it in an aw shucks way while also being cerebral. That was like kind of my shtick, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons why we reinvent ourselves as artists is because, and now that I know a little bit more about kind of neuroscience and psychology and everything, is like really those kind of flow states that you're getting into. You're doing something that like basically you want something that is just outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like too long in your comfort zone and you're gonna get bored,
Right.
and then too far outside of your comfort zone and you're gonna get insecure and
Mhm.
everything. But just if you can be like just outside of your comfort zone on a regular basis. So it's like, okay, I do a lot of short jokes, then I'm touring where I'm doing longer sets, and now it's like, sure, my stuff kills for 20-30 minutes, but 45 minutes to an hour, and people start kind of getting a little used to my rhythm, a little too
Mhm.
used to my rhythm. And so like, okay, I better throw some like stories in there. And that was like a little scary and challenging to figure out how to be a storyteller. And then
Yeah.
like, okay, now how do I like sometimes do like little more like one person sketches here and there during a thing, and
Yeah.
like or maybe a character from time to time. So just like kept on trying to do things outside of my comfort zone, and doing a themed show was one of those things. And really I was just grasping at straws. I knew after like when I got that half hour Comedy Central special, that was all my goal was before I started comedy, was like, if I got one of those, I will have made it. Of course I
Yeah.
didn't have any clue at the time, but and I got that like really quickly. So then I was just kind of like, well, now what?
Yeah.
And so that's, and then it was like, no, I have this platform and I want to say important things with this and not just jokes for jokes' sakes. And so I didn't know at the time. I was like, hey, maybe I'd want to like be a writer on the Daily Show or something
Mhm.
like that. And so I started like watching the news constantly for a while to write like topical jokes. And I did that for like a year before I was like, yeah, I definitely, that is not how I want to say something meaningful
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all. And like everyone else, and it's like I like evergreen things, that like jokes that will work forever and not just
Right.
like topical.
Yeah.
And so yeah, science, I'm surprised it took me so long, but it was probably like 7 years into my career that I like really committed to, 6 or 7 years in, that I really committed to like, oh, I'm like, I spend all of my pastime,
Yeah.
like when I'm not blackout drunk, or sometimes even when I am, I'm spending my pastime like reading, about physics or biology or whatever. Part of it first stemmed from me being just an angsty atheist when I was younger, is what originally got me into science, so I could argue with people. So I got into
Nice.
science to be a dick, not to be smart. And
So do you did you go to school for it at all, or were you just
no.
straight out the
No, because
gate into
I
comedy?
never cared about school. I actually didn't even like science in school. I didn't go to college. I didn't see how that was going to help become a comedian.
True.
I actually wish I would have understood the value of an education, and just learning generally,
Yeah.
ahead of time. Um, but yeah, I don't really I yeah, I think that um I and maybe it was cuz I didn't go to college, but I wanted to know things, and I was like insecure about having not gone to college, and not in a state of arrested development. Whatever it was, always read tons of science books, and then I mean, I'm a slow reader, but I spent a lot of time reading books.
So
And
you're
then,
probably like digesting it deeply.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I just like I never even put the idea together that like you could blend this with your comedy. Like it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like never even occurred to me. It was like what I did. Comedy was like my 9 to 5, and
Yeah,
then to
yeah.
like relax, I would read science books, and so then once I had the idea of like, oh, maybe I could, yeah, that kind of changed everything for me. So by 2010 to 11, something like that. 12, I started because I started reaching out to, I was in LA at the time. I was like, maybe I'll put together some local shows with like, I'll be able to have some scientists on stage and do like a variety show that's
Yeah.
half comedy, half science. And I was maybe gonna put together like pitch a show about like the science of mating behavior and stuff.
Nice.
And so because that seemed like a smooth transition from being like a foul-mouthed comedian to a science guy. Was why not like start with the mating
Yeah,
behavior?
yeah.
And I thought that would be like more palatable for people. And then like the more that I, you read a book about, you start reading a book about insect dicks because you think it will be funny, and then you end up being like, holy fuck. Like when you learn about some of these like evolutionary underpinnings that drive all of life,
Yeah.
that sure might just be explaining a fly penis in this particular instance, but like then it applies to just all of life and you start seeing it. Then I just got like so obsessed, and then I think by like 2012 or something like that, I had just abandoned being a regular comedian. I would just like, I went to the same clubs that I was like getting booked at that like really liked me.
Yeah.
I burnt bridges with the because I'd
You
show
did.
up and then I had like
Just science.
I would do like these themed shows, and no one was doing that.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I invented. It was all over the place in Europe, but
Oh, yeah.
no one in the US was doing like themed shows.
Yeah.
And
Did you ever play a gig in Europe?
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I've done some around. I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is like a month-long
Oh, yeah,
thing.
I've
That's like
heard of that.
insanely challenging. It's like 4,000 shows a day or something like that. The average attendance for a show is like 4 people or something. It's crazy.
Wild.
And yeah, it's just like half the comedians of the world all trying to like win an award there to catch a break. And then I figured out like a way to do it that made me happy,
Yeah.
that I was comfortable with, and I seemed like audiences were liking more and more.
Yeah.
And then I organically like took a chance on a psychedelic show. It was like the weirdest thing, like why that all happened. I always had psychedelic jokes, and I always assumed I would do a psychedelic themed show eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Shane Mauss was going to have to be like a household name or something like that before I could take a chance on like this subject that was taboo. It never occurred to me that I could book a show as like psychedelic comedy show and hosted by a guy that you may or may not have heard of. And then once I figured that out, it was just so lovely that it was like because I still had even if people didn't know who I was, I still had the pedigree of like, this guy's been on Conan and Comedy Central. So it's not just like some schmuck making a psychedelic comedy show.
It's not just a
veteran comedian.
Yeah.
And so it was like, it turned out to be a really lovely way to get people to listen to me blab about perception and consciousness and cognitive biases and the things that I actually care about more than comedy. But in a fun way. And certainly, I mean, now I feel like with the psychedelic stuff, I'm living past Shane's dream.
Nice.
I'm like, this one's for you, buddy. You worked real hard 20 years ago or whatever, and your mind would be fucking blown if you knew what I was doing now. But like,
isn't that
how
wild?
much do I care? I don't know.
What is time?
Yeah, I know. And so the point is like marketing a show that's like, hey, come to a comedy show about cognitive biases or
Yeah,
about
yeah,
neuroscience or whatever. It's not that. And I have advertised shows like that, and
yeah.
and I've figured out how to do that too, and that is fun in
Do
its
you
own
get
right. But it's more kind of sellable. It's like
sure.
it's a lovely kind of like gimmick to get people into more cerebral,
Right,
thoughtful
yeah. You
things.
Trojan horse them with the psychedelics, and then you release all
Yeah,
the
because
cognitive bias and
well, science is so like unfortunately associated with like people my age is like we grew up watching like Revenge of the Nerds or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
like that's the like, oh, Bill Gates
Boring.
and
That
so
kind of thing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's like, no, this is about our perception, our interpretations of life, the ways that we behave, the odd ways in which we spend money,
Yeah.
and like the things that we do to attract a potential mate, and advertise for status, and it's just
Well, if you think
endlessly fascinating and
right.
applicable, and at the end of the day I think it is so funny, but it's because just life is so funny, and the truth of it is so fucking bizarre that any of us are here and get to experience this or learn about any of these things that our ancestors never were privy to, like understanding some of these evolutionary principles and stuff,
Yeah.
that realizing that this is like a 4.5 billion-year-old work in progress that we get to be a part of, and so I think science is cool as fuck,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
I think that it still has this like perception of being like squares, and now there's like the conspiratorial side of it, like what are these scientists up to? I don't understand. Or
Yeah, yeah.
and so I think that blending it with psychedelics is a way to like make science cool,
Yeah,
and
oh for
so
sure.
it's a fun way to like trick people into listening to me blab about the things that I actually care about. Because I think psychedelics are uh, a means to an end, and not the end in and of
Right.
itself.
Right, right. I agree. I think reality in and of itself is trippy as hell.
Mhm.
It,
It's how
it
I open my shows with like
yeah.
basically that similar. Like, this is my thesis statement for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
show. It's that all of reality is a trip, and that
Yeah.
like it's easy to forget because we get so used to it. And I'm going to keep on reiterating that like throughout this
Yeah.
show.
Okay, I might have to check my notes here to see where we go from here.
Yeah, check them out.
Because I
I'm
have
lost. I'm out of words. You hear how fast I was
you were
talking there?
going, man.
Yeah, I
I was
wasn't
like,
even letting you get a word in
it was
edgewise.
great. It
No,
was great.
I saw. You think I didn't notice you trying to talk? I noticed. I'm like, I'm gonna keep on.
I
I'm
was
gonna
about to
power right through
I was about
this.
to go and do a display of dominance like a
Yeah,
Chimp Empire.
good
Have you seen
luck.
that show?
What's that?
It's Chimp Empire on Netflix. It's
Oh,
Have you seen it?
I just started. I just watched. I'm on episode 2 right
They've
now.
named them all. So Jackson, the alpha male. It's just I find it hilarious
Oh yeah.
when his display of dominance. He's the alpha in the group, and the chips will all just be sitting around chilling, like lounging, eating whatever they eat, and he just sort of looks around because he's got to display his dominance, and he's just like. And he gets up and just basically does like aggro parkour while throwing limbs through the jungle and stuff.
I saw Jackson. That was
Yeah,
first
yeah.
episode stuff, right?
It was oh man, I don't know why. It's just, and so I kept joking with Sarah that I'm gonna go out into the parking lot out here and start throwing sticks around.
You should throw some sticks around. It's surprising. Although, I will say that it's context is everything. And I'm sure I'm sure there was a time in even human ancestral past where throwing some sticks around.
Oh
It's
yeah.
oh, don't mess with that guy.
We basically
now
just
you see someone throwing sticks around in the street, you're like, hey,
you're like, that's
do we help him
yeah.
or do we
Just let him go.
we let him go? I
Yeah.
think we ignore it. I think we try to forget that
That we
about
all
the
used to
human
be like that.
condition. And, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just more refined in our displays and our status games at
Yeah,
this
I
point,
barely
right?
throw poop anymore.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
It's so archaic.
Yeah, I know. And in fact, it's more of a sign of like, you know, it's like if I throw poop at you, it's like you should be honored really, because it's like you really like did something special. That's
Well,
like a once twice a year thing tops.
nice. Well, so like speaking of like the status game, do
Mhm.
you? I mean, I know that I fall victim to this sometimes. How do you deal with like the comparison game or like the whole status game? Have you totally divorced yourself from that in the comedy realm or even in the science realm? I find myself sort of doom scrolling like any good millennial, and just having to like throw the phone across the room like I would, sticks in the jungle, and
Yeah,
just to like get rid of it. So I oscillate sometimes between being like knowing that this object in my hand is very bad for me, but not sometimes being able to pull away.
yeah. Mhm.
And I think that they've sort of
Actually
tapped into
like
like the status
Instagram.
game.
I gotta be honest with
You
you.
don't?
No, I like
Oh,
it.
you
I
do?
do
Yeah, yeah.
enjoy Instagram. I didn't think that I would ever like a social media ever, and I didn't even start using Instagram till COVID, which was like
Mm.
however many years
Yeah,
behind the
sure.
game. And like I started like I was forced by my representation to like go on MySpace back in the day, like forced, and then forced to like
Who are your top 8?
by
I'm
oh
just
my
kidding.
god. I mean, so I caught my break and had representation in 2007, and so that was
Wow.
that was April 2007. So that was at the time like Dane Cook had
Right.
proved that like, hey, if you really figure out this MySpace thing, like you can really launch. And he's doing like stadiums or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Facebook came along, and it was like you better get, and so Facebook was already kind of established ish, and then like Twitter was right behind that, of like you need to get on Twitter. And I just started as using those platforms to just like say just like obnoxiously like trivial things to
Sure.
like
To be funny.
just to be fun. Like that was like my sense of humor at the time was like I always liked pushing buttons and boundaries and stuff. That's part of the reason why I got into the science stuff, was I just got so fucking bored with that.
Yeah.
That like it was like at first it was in the beginning like stand on stage and see if you can like get away with this like fisting joke or whatever and still get a laugh. And then like that just got so boring over time that then it was like, well, now I wonder if I can like play with the you can get the same thing of like violating a social norm by seeing how long you can go with like setting up a high concept, or like the now to get that same rush, I see how long I can go without a laugh, like intentionally.
Yeah.
Like can I go like 2 minutes with that? Like that's an incredible amount of time
Yeah.
for a stand-up comedian to go, and like, and it better really pay off, if you did that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of became my thing. But that was, and so that was my whole relationship with social media, was like I always hated it.
Yeah.
And then and now on Instagram I watch a lot of like, this dog became friends with a goat.
Yeah.
The goat's like blind, and the dog leads it around.
So you're
and
not
stuff,
watching other stand-ups or anything?
I'm so bored by comedians.
Yeah, I guess.
I just went on a because Vegas was like a harder sell than like, that's part of why I'm touring and being on the road. The way you market to like a Vegas crowd is like it's like a 3-4 day turnaround of people being in the where I'm used to like
Oh, right.
marketing, where I'm like getting the word out a month in advance of like me going through a city, and so I kind of know how to do all of that. And so it was just like very frustrating, and like, hey, maybe this stupid psychedelic gimmick isn't gonna go anywhere anyway. And so I was like, maybe I'll just do regular stand-up again. And so I started watching like some of the best stand-up out there, and I was just like, okay, some of it's fine, you know.
Yeah.
And I used to watch stand-up comedy. I used to watch like multiple specials a day. Like,
Who were your influences before you
like
started?
Stephen Wright, Emo Phillips,
Nice.
and then like eventually like Zach Galifianakis and
Hell
stuff
yeah.
like that. As I was getting older, those were the guys that were coming up that I was like really impressed by. That I always liked absurdist type things.
Yeah,
Then,
yeah.
like Doug Stanhope, who's kind of
Nice.
like this rebellious, like degenerate but very clever.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like the shock value crap that a lot of new comedians will try to do, but it's just so boring.
It's like hacky and
hacky,
silly.
but he does it in like such a clever, interesting way. So I really liked people like that. But I would watch bad comedy constantly too, and like I enjoyed watching bad comedy. And then you spend enough time in the game, and now it's just like I just don't care. I don't know if it's like that with painting, or just like another fucking fractal or whatever, you know. And like you can't do it anymore.
I just don't know. Yeah, I've personally, I guess, like I've gotten a lot better than when I started. It sounds like you had a knack for it like right away.
I was exceptionally good immediately.
Like if you saw my old stuff, it's I'll be the first to say it's just not good. It's like not very good.
Yeah, I feel like if anything, I got like worse at moments
really
over time as I tried to challenge myself and reinvent myself. Yeah.
So I mean, for me, I'm maybe a kind of a slow learner or a slow adapter, but I did get to a point where I was kind of like, all right, well, what do I paint now? And so now it's been more about sort of like trimming the fat off of an idea, and more about like playing with like optical, like actual. I couldn't articulate this, but the science of seeing. Rather than like
perception's incredible.
Yeah.
So
you
ever watch OK Go videos at all?
OK Go. Is that a band?
Yeah, that's a band.
I don't think I have. Or no, the guys that are in the airplane that like float around.
Yeah, that's one of them.
One of those videos.
Yeah,
okay,
But they do some stuff playing around with optical illusions and things like that are very clever.
Yeah, they fascinate me so much. You know, you hung out at Threda this weekend, and the term people use is visionary art.
We're wearing a Threda
shouts
thing right now.
Shouts to Pete.
Some Chambers project too.
I
got 2 different psychedelic gallery things going right now.
Yeah. But the term visionary art gets bandied about a lot.
Yeah.
And to me, like optical illusion is actually visionary art because it's literally visionary art, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of playing with that concept recently. So it hasn't gotten totally like boring for me because I don't think initially I was super duper talented at it. It was just sort of like a thing, like, you know, I was in a band in college, and like I've dabbled in like running lights at shows and in stand up. And so it was just kind of a thing that I stuck with for long enough. And, you know, I think if you just stick around with something, eventually you like get good enough to have a piece or two in a gallery every now and then.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I love your stuff, and I love that you incorporate those elements, because it's like I follow a lot of scientists on Twitter, so I get to, you know, some of them are often sharing various like visual illusions and
nice.
You know, little study why does this person see this color and this.
Yeah,
I love when those little things pop up.
Yeah, it's funny because I follow obviously a shit ton of artists, but follow a bunch of comedians on Instagram too. So I'm kind of like following what you do as like a 9 to 5, and then you're following the science.
Yeah. And it's funny because I almost never post on Instagram, and I follow a lot of comedians, but I have to say I'm usually zipping right by them.
Yeah. Just because
Usually
you're
it's
just
just like
bored
they're
with the
friends of
medium, you
mine or
think?
whatever.
Yeah.
For the most part, but I will say, like, there's this guy, James Acaster, this English guy,
Mhm.
has a 4-part special on Netflix, and I saw that during this time when I was like, ugh,
Mhm.
I don't like traditional comedy anymore, and I mean, I've been doing this about 20 years now,
Yeah.
and intensely studying comedy before I ever started. But then, I found someone that I was like, it was really inspiring because he is someone that does like really absurdist stuff, but does it in a long form
Mhm.
way. And I'm like, that's interesting. I've done long form and I've done absurdist, but I haven't combined them together. And so smart, and his precision. I used to be a very precise comedian, and then
Would you like trim words out of sentences and stuff?
oh yeah, I would like record my sets. I would listen to like how long a joke was. I would like write that down. I would like rate the joke. I would look
Yeah.
at the words and see what words I could pull out, and then I would like see how many like laughs per minute I was getting and what the strength of
So
those laughs
you were
were.
doing like analytics before, like, the tech analytics of today, like
Yeah,
on your own set.
math was the only subject that I ever cared about or was
Really?
good at in school, and
Nice.
for me, comedy was very mathematical. I thought the timing was very
Ah,
mathematical, and I thought there was like formula. I always thought of jokes in terms of like a formula,
sure.
like building tension in this way here before relieving it before this pause here, with tag here equals this, and so I always kind of like viewed it as through a mathematical lens, and that made me feel very comfortable
Mhm.
in the beginning because I had like so much control over it. And then as I got more comfortable with myself on stage and as a performer, I'm much more like, I guess my vibe is just a friend that you're hanging out with that
Nice.
is, has is a
You've
good
loosened the
storyteller.
reins a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a lot more improvised and stuff.
Nice. You want to take a pause just for a sec?
Sure.
Cool. And we're back.
Hello.
So I wanted to talk about psychedelics for a bit,
Yeah, let's do
because
it.
this is ostensibly an art podcast, but we tend to talk about, or I tend to talk about psychedelics a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just ask a really basic, silly question. What's your favorite?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms?
Yeah, I mean,
And why?
I mean, I'm getting into 2CB.
Oh yeah?
I
Isn't that like a 16-hour
2CB?
or
Oh
wait,
no.
what's
2CB is like 4. I
shows
mean,
you
it
how
could be up
much
to
I
like
know.
6 hours. Absolutely lovely. It's a little more like MDMA kind of in the body, like warm feeling without like the grindy speediness of it, and then visually like mushrooms, I would say. And but clear-headed. It's like the most clear-headed psychedelic that there is. I mean,
Nice.
we don't really know what is and isn't a psychedelic and like how to categorize these things
Sure.
exactly, but let's call it in the realm of that. And I yeah, so I go through trends. It just depends. So I can tell you, like, mushrooms, for me, best for depression, best for creativity,
Okay.
and like, say, writing material, coming up with novel ideas, planning out like a path forward in life. LSD is my least favorite, but probably like I would maybe do it at a festival if I was going to be like hanging out all day and I just wanted something that was like very functional, but like put a little glitter on the
Fun and
edges
yeah.
of things and gave a bit of energy. And I knew I wasn't going to have a chance for a nap that day.
Yeah.
My body is used to napping on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Yes.
And so little LSD would help there. MDMA is like pretty good for connecting. I thought I was doing last night. I thought I maybe got my hands on Quaalude, which was very exciting. And then
I don't know if I've ever had a
either wasn't
Quaalude.
a Quaalude, or either the person what they thought was a Quaalude wasn't, or they did say they're like, I marked these. I didn't like mark these correctly, so I think this is the Quaalude. I was like very excited to try it.
Yeah.
And so we did we thought we're Quaaludes, and we were like, oh no, we'll turn on Wolf of Wall Street and like
Yeah.
have a laugh. And then it turned out to be more, whatever it was much closer to MDMA. And then
Really?
I'm like, I have too much empathy right now
Yeah.
to be watching Wolf of Wall Street.
It'll make you
and
cry
I'm
instead
just
of
like,
laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so MDMA buys with my girlfriend, and also a business partner too. And so it was like we were having this lovely, heartfelt conversation about our business goals and stuff like that as we're just getting ready to launch
Yeah, talk
My
about
Purple Lady.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute.
November 1st.
My Purple Lady.
Yeah, if you go to mypurplelady.com and join the email list, there might even be pre-sale stuff available by the time you're watching this. But yeah, it started with just a boy with a dream, which was to give people a psychoactive experience that isn't alcohol during a show. And because when I started doing psychedelic shows, people were like, oh, is there gonna be like mushrooms at the show and stuff? And I found that so annoying.
Yeah.
But then after a while I was like, well, what would it look like to do something that like everyone could be on the same page, but still it was something that like you could watch a comedy show to, so you're not like laid out on the floor K-holing or whatever else. And so I started experimenting with Amanita muscaria years ago.
And that's legal, I just found out.
Yeah, it's illegal. It's not because it's not psilocybin.
Oh, okay.
And so it's psilocybin that's illegal, not, obviously there's
Not in
a zillion
Denver.
mushrooms. And not in Denver, yeah. I don't even know what the laws are. And then but like federally, that's the other thing too, is like people forget like, hey, federally they can still, and they do sometimes come like when these like laws have been enacted, like someone will go on the news and be like, hey, yeah, look, I'm growing mushrooms now and it's great, and then the feds will be like, you know what, let's just like make an example out of this, so that people don't get too cocky, too cavalier about this stuff. So Amanita muscaria is just like basically never regulated, and so
nice.
So it's like a gray area in that, like, is this a supplement? So it falls under supplement laws. That's kind of like as it is right now, and supplement laws are honestly so fucking shady. But like, why not use the system that I think supplements are so goddamn shady, but now I find myself in the supplement business because I want to provide a psychoactive effect for people, and that's like a way of like, it's very unregulated, and so it's like there's a lot of just placebo crap being peddled, and then Blue Lotus, but the idea is that I work with someone who goes around the world finding like kind of obscure plants that are like historically had some ritualistic use, like Egyptians would put blue lotus in their wine, and it'd be like often an aphrodisiac.
It's my first time having it, by the way.
Are you feeling it at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Yeah, it's like it's nuanced.
Yeah.
It's mild. You're not gonna freak out.
Right.
I'm just starting to feel mine a little bit. We had like 2 little gummies before.
I didn't really eat anything today, so
all that makes a difference. We're gonna have it in a lot of different forms, so you can take it in different, like we'll have little drinks and stuff like that. So it'll hit you in different ways depending on what form that it's in. But lovely little social drug.
It's
and
nice.
It takes away social anxiety, and so that's the idea, is like eventually people will be able to come to my show, have a little like Blue Lotus or Amanita muscaria before the show, and then like I do material about like the history of this stuff, and as you're feeling the effects, and then and so it's just this like really neat idea that was like honestly scary as fuck to actually pursue, because like
Sure.
it's not just like the legality of things, which, you know, I checked and double checked, and, you know, it's a large portion of the proceeds of my products quite generously go to the lawyers and supporting their families. And so, and, you know, figuring out what, and, you know, they're very likely with some of these things may get regulated eventually. And there's
Yeah.
often going to be like a cat and mouse sort of situation, quite honestly, and you know, FDA or whatever saying like, hey, you can't do this, and you need to cease and desist, and like, okay, I'll do this other thing. And it's a whole weird business, and it's hard. It's a lot of effort to do right. Unfortunately, like I've partnered with someone that has like a 200,000 square foot manufacturing, and they were like
nice.
very early in the CBD game, and as like just about as much experience as you could have doing this. And they started within the sustainability industry, and so like decades ago, and so they often are like really focused on kind of doing things on the up and up, and in sustainable ways, because also sustainability is functional and profitable, and it's just like short-sighted to skip the sustainability aspect of it. So it like costs a little more up front, but then you have something that's a product more people like, but it is also more efficient over time. And so it's like this whole project that blends really well with everything that I do. You know what it's like? I did a festival last year, as I had the show Mind Under Matter with a artist friend of mine, Ramin Nazer, and we put together this festival, and the first year was successful, although it lost money, but it was successful. Every first year festival does. It was an investment, and everyone loved it. And we were looking at doing a year two. And anyway, within that, like one of the things that we realized was like, I don't like tent rental companies, and we have people flying from like all over Europe and like Australia and stuff to come to this festival. And so like, how do we provide? And so I like look into it and figure things out. And then like next thing I know, I'm like, fuck, am I about to start a tent rental business? I think that I might have to, just to make this festival like happen the way that I want it to, with like my vision. And that's sort of like how this happened, is like My Purple Lady. Like I didn't set out to create like a drug or supplement business or whatever, but now it's just like kind of necessary to make a vision of like a grandiose novel dream, to like be able to, I like to do things that people haven't done before. And that, when you asked me the question earlier, like, do you ever like get jealous of, it's like, well, I've yet to like see, I don't know who's doing anything,
no
like
one's doing what you're doing.
It's like it's like weird and crazy, and like and it's also so genuine to me. So like if I actually get some real success with this, then like people might be like, then agents and managers will start going to their clients like, hey, have you ever thought about putting some science in your jokes? Because everyone's so fucking desperate that they like try to follow whatever's successful at the time. But as it is right now, like no one's doing this. I like produce and I market my own shit, and I do front to back. And so this has just been, so now this has been this interesting and time-consuming and challenging project that I've taken on, where we'll find various plants and then various like combinations of them, and making proprietary blends of things. And there's, you know, there's stuff like you know, products with I won't give away things that I like actually care about, but there's things like you can, you know, nutmeg can be psychoactive, for instance, and it's not. And it's not regulated, and it's also not the sort of thing that you want to just be like taking a chance at yourself. So like actually making a reliable product that I can be like, here, take 2 of these gummies, and within 30-45 minutes you can expect this sort of effect. And I think the prediction was
pretty much
accurate.
right on. I looked over at the time earlier, and we were at about 40 minutes, and I was like, my face was hurting from smiling. I was like,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. It's just a smile enhancer. And so it's also just like, what a great thing to be able to give people a smile enhancer
Yeah.
before a fucking comedy show.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
amazing.
And it's not like the boozy, like you run the risk of someone heckling you or whatever it is.
It's potentially an alcohol replacement,
Sure.
and which more and more people aren't drinking anymore.
Are
And
you?
so it's
You're not
also,
drinking now, are you? Are you? You kind of are.
I wasn't drinking the last few months, and then I decided I was going to. This is our soft launch I came to Denver to do, to like experiment with like
Sure.
those gummies that I gave you are
Yeah.
like prototypes, you know.
Yeah.
And so I quit drinking, and I was like, and then I'll have like some drinks and champagne during the product launch.
Sure.
Because I never want to quit drinking forever, but as long as
Right.
I know, like I'm like, I will not drink until this time.
Sure,
And then it's like something I can look forward to, but also I usually don't miss it. It's just, there's
Yeah.
something about the idea of like quitting drinking forever
Yeah.
that like, it just fucks with my head in a way that it
So
makes
much
it
pressure.
hard for me to do that.
I feel you. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like over the lockdowns or whatever, I almost didn't have anything to drink,
Yeah.
which seemed to be like opposite of what everybody else was doing. I was just like, I was kind of in this headspace of like, oh, now the rest of the world will kind of see how I live day to day,
Mhm.
because art is never a guaranteed financial thing.
Yeah.
And I'm, usually home.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Yeah.
So I was pretty comfortable. But yeah, I think just like really learning to, for me, it's like moderating down over the course of my life, because I mean, I drank a lot when I was really young.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
a lot. And now like I can't handle the hangover.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I mean, that's the thing. I actually like, I have like I drank when I had the party the other night. I
Yeah.
was having some booze and everything, and so like, you know, I didn't get out of control or embarrassed. I still like drank like a fair amount, and I felt pretty good. And it's not even like the hangover's that bad for me usually. It's just that my productivity is down so much, and then it's like I'm firing up my science podcast. Here we are again, and I took a hiatus from it to put together this show, but it was every week for like 8 years before that.
Yeah.
And you know what that grind can feel
Oh
like
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And so it's been a nice break, but I need to fire back up. But like when I'm talking with scientists each week, and it's not like, ooh, scientists are so smart. It's just like, say I were to talk to like a mechanic or a carpenter about what they did, someone that is a specialist in something that you aren't familiar with,
Right.
that they know inside and out, and there's like a different vocabulary for and everything else. It is taxing and challenging trying to like research and get up to speed. And I just can't, like, if I like, so I'll have to make decisions. It's like, well, I'm not really like fucking up or anything right now with alcohol. I would say I'm definitely drinking way too often, and like it'll get to be like all day, every day. Like sometimes I'll like go to brunch, have a mimosa, maybe or two, and then go home, take a nap, and then have a couple before the show, and then have one or two during the show, and then maybe hang out with people afterwards. And now it's like, next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I drank all day, every day, and I was just functional-ish through it. And then there's one functional that's like to get you through a day in a bunch of social situations.
Right.
Sure. Like social lubricant, great.
Sure.
But then it's another kind of functional to be like, I need to interview someone about who's a hyena expert or something right now, and I need to like really learn the science and ins and outs of how hyenas work. And like, you just cannot operate at a high level like that when you're doing, in my opinion, anything on that regular of a basis. But alcohol especially. Yeah.
Speaking of interviewing scientists, I saw your interview with Sapolsky.
Ah,
It
my
was
favorite
great.
scientist
Yeah.
ever. Well, it was so
We
unfortunate that his sound was so bad.
I could understand him.
Yeah,
It was
it
bad. I
was.
mean, that's kind of what you get with Zooms.
Yeah, it was like there's like people in his house like making. It was like they waited till he was recording to start
Oh,
doing all of the pots and pans in the house. And but yeah, my favorite sign. I'm actually, this is how busy I am. I'm supposed to be like getting back to him to interview him about his new book, Determined, and I just have not had a chance to read it yet.
yeah. For anybody watching or listening, check out Robert Sapolsky,
Best there is.
Sapolsky.
Yeah.
He's a
So
neurobiologist. I got
a neuroscientist and
neuroscience.
primatologist
Right. Okay.
who has a exceedingly well-rounded. I mean, basically his whole thing. He's become popular as a science writer, I suppose,
Mhm.
as well, and much of his stuff is about kind of not categorizing things and putting things in buckets, and kind of analyzing the various different aspects of multiple fields of science that go into understanding behavior. So
Yeah.
if a behavior happened, what happened moments before in the brain that caused that behavior? What was the stimulus on the outside that caused that neural behavior? What were the hormones that were fluctuating hours to days before in the brain? Then going back to how was your week, month, year been? What's your financial status, your relationship status? What was your adolescence like? What was your parenting style like? What was your prenatal environment
Yeah.
like? And then what was your like the ancestral
Ancestry.
past that shaped you? And so that's that's endlessly fascinating to me. Like, take a
Yeah.
single given behavior and try to look through it from all of those lenses and
Yeah.
see what those influences were.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing
Yeah.
stuff.
He's the man. He's got hours and hours of lectures online
Human
via
behavioral
Stanford.
biology
Yeah.
course is fantastic.
And
He also did some through Coursera. I think they eventually, no, not Coursera, the teaching company or something. I think they changed their name along the way, but there are multiple classes with Robert Sapolsky. I've taken all of them. They're all so good. I would say
Yeah.
they're probably even better than his books, which are also fantastic.
yeah. Yeah. I think human behavior is so fascinating.
Oh yeah.
And at risk of committing a party foul here, the more and more I learn, it seems like the idea of a totally free will, like, person inside the head acting out things as a human being is like just totally a myth, just like total bullshit
Yeah.
that may have been invented actually by or at least ensconced by like Christianity,
Mhm.
because you're either a person willfully committing good acts and getting treats from a guy in the sky, or you're being punished for your bad ones.
Yeah,
Eh,
well, it fits really nicely into all these various cognitive biases that we have. The first of which being like egocentrism and thinking that we're at the center of everything. But then there's these kind of fundamental attribution biases where which is like a foundation of a lot of othering, and that comes
oh yeah,
that is a
yeah.
byproduct of that egocentrism, which is that, like, when something good happens to me, it's because I earned it. When something
Right.
bad happens to me, it's because I had a bit of bum luck and the world's unfair or whatever.
Right, yeah.
When something bad happens to someone else, it's because they earned
Yeah.
that. They did something wrong. They should have behaved differently. When something good happens to someone else, they just got lucky, and
Yeah.
it should have been you or whatever, and could
And
be you in the future.
that makes me
So,
think of like karma, and sort of like, I think that from my understanding at least, is that the West sort of misunderstands karma, where like I think it initially meant just like the like one cause and effect, essentially.
mhm.
Like you do one thing and consequently this other thing happened, and
Mhm.
then that chain of events, and that's, you're just living in this sort of chain of events.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find the whole like free will topic fascinating. I think that
Yeah.
I try and talk about it with my fiance, and she hates it at this point because it was definitely my and I talk very, non-scientific. I told her that, or I told you that she's getting her PhD in evolutionary biology and ecology. So she sort of was like, you need to learn how to say this better. And me being the lazy person that I am, I have not learned how to say it better. But
Yeah, I mean, generally, it's like it's always fell within like the philosophical realm of things.
right, yeah,
So
yeah,
this is the way decades ago, the like real scientific community, chemists, biologists, or whatever, would be like, I don't want to. We don't talk about
we don't want to touch.
consciousness
Yeah,
here. We
yeah.
don't talk about free will. That's within the realm of. That's for philosophers, and these fucking philosophers don't really prove anything or
Yeah, yeah.
test anything and don't know what they're they're just
Right.
but I don't think that's that's starting to
Break
not
down. Yeah.
break down a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wonder if we're just living in, Buddhists talk about enlightenment as like, sort of like seeing past the self.
Mm-hmm.
And if this whole self is just like one big cognitive bias that we're all like subject to until
Yeah,
we're not. Is that it?
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I think that that's an interesting way to. I think that for me, free will is interesting in that we care about it at all. Like the very, I mean, the only reason why I think there could be free will is that it was some evolved thing that's looking for something that we do have some measure of control over some things, and then
Yeah.
and so because free will is actually not important to us in a lot of if you ask someone, do you want to have free will? Yes, I want to have free will. And then you go, okay, well, think about every step that you're making, every breath that you're taking, and
Yeah, yeah.
like people want others to choose the restaurant. People love surprise parties. People sometimes like being surprised. Part of what comedy works is being surprised
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and everything. So there are, like, when you think about it through that lens, there's a lot of times in which people would like to take that free will away from themselves. They just don't see it on pay. And then also people want free will for themselves and they want control for others. so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so like, do you they survey people and go like, would you rather be able to feel everything and not be in any control, or to feel everything and be in or not feel anything
Yeah.
and be in perfect control? And people will be like, well, I want to feel, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take the feelings instead, even if I don't have the
Perfect control.
perfect
Yeah.
control over it. And then they ask, well, what about others? And
They're
it
like,
tends to be like, I don't really need to care about their feelings. I
yeah.
want them to
Yeah.
be like in control of themselves,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and know that, because predictability and control are two of the biggest things that any mammal's after, and like any organism at all, really. And so those are the two biggest stressors when they get taken away. So the more unpredictable and the less control that we have, the more we kind of have these illusions of it and try to have these top down superstitions, conspiracies, spiritualities that then like
Yeah.
evolve from this like idea of it's probably a way of calming down our overactive stress response system, because we get socially valued for appearing more confident and everything, as so
In
you gain
control.
status even if
Yeah.
you can't necessarily back it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tricky thing too, because it's not like we don't have agency over some parts of what we're doing here,
Mhm.
but like I didn't choose to be, as far as I know or can remember, that's kind of a woo woo thing that people like to bandy about. Like, oh, you chose to be here. It's like, I don't know if I did. Maybe I
Mhm.
did. But like, I didn't choose to be born me, in 1985 in Lexington, Kentucky, to my
Mhm.
parents
Right.
in this spot. And I think just starting from there, it's like, all right. And then how my life has unfolded from that you go like even success in art or comedy, like there's a fair bit of luck going on there,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, or failure, even bad luck. You know, you could say it's bad luck. But yeah, I find it a very interesting topic that like it really gores multiple oxes at once when you bring up like, hey, by the way, well, we don't have free will. And
Yeah, I mean, there's also like how empathetic of a person are you? Because if you're more empathetic, you probably believe less in free will, and
yeah,
if you're less empathetic, you probably believe more in free will. So if you're a softie like Sapolsky who cares about everyone and spends much of his later years going and testifying in court because for in the defense of trying to get people lessened
yeah,
sentences and things, because he understands that most of this, like, there were all of these variables that led to, like, this person had brain damage or whatever
right,
that
right,
led to, and so like from his point, like he thinks about determinism through that lens, where then if you're like one of these libertarian influencers, that's like, what you need to do is pull up your bootstraps and
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
then you believe in free will because, like, gosh darn it, you overcome everything, and then you have
yeah,
this
yeah,
expectation for everyone else to
right,
as well, or you manifest the world around you too. That's the other, that I guess, yeah, there's the manifestors and the optimizers are kind of doing the same thing, but from two different lenses, which is like, I control the universe.
yeah,
And
yeah,
some people are like, I control the universe with my mind and just thinking positive thoughts about how I want my outcomes to be.
yeah.
And then the other side is like, no, life isn't easy and you got to blast through these walls, and then there's blends of them.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the placebo effects of those two things, though? Is like
Oh, I love it.
that could be that could be the real thing happening there,
I
right?
mean, life is about finding a placebo that works for you. I
Yeah.
think placebo. I think placebo is a dirtier word than it should be, which is that, like, because if one of these supplement companies is selling, like, I mean, that Blue Lotus that you took, like, like,
Yeah.
there's hardly anyone would be able to, like, take what you took and be like, yeah, this
Right.
isn't anything,
Right.
but like, these companies that say, like, hey, take this and that thing and you'll get to live forever, and usually it's a sugar pill, that's fraud. That's just
Certainly.
straight up fraud. but
Yeah.
but for but for for any individual to come up with, like, a ritual or do, like, some sort of little thing that at least, like, makes them think that everything's gonna be okay, and, like,
Yeah.
gives them
Yeah.
a little pep in their step or whatever, makes people treat kinder, like, placebos can be used in nefarious ways, and then they can also be used in, like, really positive ways
Yeah.
too,
You can
just like,
harness. You can sort of harness the effects,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we're pretty much out of time,
Yeah, I just
unfortunately.
got a busy day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have like I have a big My Purple Lady manufacturing meeting coming up
Ooh,
in like
nice.
30 minutes here, so it's
Great. Great.
making sure all the product is
Well,
going to be ready November 1st.
can you plug some dates towards the middle to end of October? What are you doing?
Well, I can tell
Where are
you
we
about
going?
where I'm going to be. Well, mid October, I'll be doing some stuff in New York. There's this psychedelic assembly that's the first brick and mortar library and social club that is doing this spookadelic, a psychedelic haunted house with a bad trip kind of theme of a haunted house that I'm participating in, and I'm a big fan and collaborator of the Psychedelic Assembly and out there. And so that'd be a cool, really different thing that I've never put together. Crossing our fingers that it's not lame. It's like a bit of
Yeah.
like a theatrical production, but it's like, I love. I think people should go out and check out, like, the more experimental things when they can, because then
Sure.
when they
Yeah.
can see the polished version later, then
Yeah.
you get to have both experiences of it.
Sure.
And then speaking of polished versions, I mean, for a lot of people, I really think that there is, like, if you're into, like, psychedelics and art and that realm, like, my Better Trip tour is, like, it's one of the better shows that I think you could see out there. I mean,
Nice.
people tell me that all the time. I put a lot of work into it, and it's not a one person thing. I collaborate with a bunch of different people, and I'm very proud that like a team of people has helped put this together. So I'll be starting in November, I think a lot around the Midwest, and then I'll be shooting after Thanksgiving. I'm gonna do Thanksgiving with the fam in Wisconsin, and then shooting straight south for the winter, where I'll be like kind of going through like the Bible Belt, and then around through Florida, and then the southern coast, and so that's
awesome.
I basically am in the south when it's cold, and I'm in the north when it's warm, and then there's like one-offs like this where I deviate from my routing to do something special, and I find myself coming through the Denver Boulder area a strange amount, so I love it here.
Yep. And the Here We Are podcast and the Mind Under Matter podcast, both excellent podcasts.
Yeah, Here We Are is relaunching in November. I don't know when or if Mind Under Matter is relaunching at this moment with the bandwidth that I have, but Here We Are is definitely it's a science podcast, so
yeah.
It's not meant to be a comedy podcast at all. So just another aspect of the things that I like to do to mix it up a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Shane.
Yeah,
really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
Is super fun.
Yeah. See y'all later. Bye. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Artsy AF Podcast. If you are interested in supporting the Patreon, that address is patreon.com/ArtsyAF Podcast. And I want to thank all my patrons. You guys keep this engine running. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you again for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. Do all those little things that help get Artsy AF into the consciousness of more and more people. Shout.